They call Antarctica the harshest continent, a place of blinding white and killing cold. They're not wrong. But down here, during the 6 months of the polar night, harsh doesn't even begin to cover it. My name is Dr. Samuel Arkwright, meteorologist, atmospheric physicist, and currently the sole occupant and operator of Boreas Point Weather Station, perched on a desolate ice shelf overlooking the frozen Weddell Sea. Isolation? That's the job description. 6 months completely alone, babysitting sensors, analyzing data, and trying not to let the infinite darkness outside seep into the fragile shelter of the station, or my mind. Why take such a posting? Let's just say my previous research trajectory hit a rather public and embarrassing dead end involving miscalibrated climate models and accusations I'd rather forget. Boreas Point, funded by the enigmatic Global Atmospheric Research Consortium, GARC, offered a way out, generous funding, paid upfront, thankfully, complete autonomy, within strict operational parameters, and the chance to disappear from the academic world for half a year. Plus, the sheer extremity of the environment held a certain scientific allure. The station isn't large. A central, multi-level core hub containing the control room, labs, my surprisingly comfortable living quarters, and life support, flanked by 2 extendables wings, one housing the power systems, a small geothermal unit supplemented by wind turbines, the other the primary sensor and communication arrays. Everything is built on heavy-duty, adjustable pylons drilled deep into the ice shelf, designed to withstand hurricane-force winds and shifting ice. Outside, a perimeter of sensor masts, automated drones, and meteorological towers stretches into the darkness. Dr. Anya Sharma, my remote contact at GARC headquarters, judging by the faint satellite delay, likely somewhere in Geneva, provided the operational overview via encrypted video calls before my deployment. Mostly straightforward: maintain equipment, monitor atmospheric conditions from the troposphere down to the ice shelf itself, collect data, ensure the automated systems function correctly. Then came the Polar Night Observation Protocols, a separate, password-protected addendum to the main station manual, flagged Eyes Only, Level 7 clearance. Specific, non-negotiable, and deeply strange. Auroral Event Log, KP7 during periods of high geomagnetic activity resulting in intense auroral displays, continuously monitor spectral emissions via spectrometer array delta. Log any non-standard spectral lines, frequencies inconsistent with known atmospheric gas excitation patterns, using protocol Sigma 9 uplink. Should an anomalous source persist for 5 minutes, cease direct delta observation immediately and rely solely on buffered telemetry. If the southern lights get weird, log the weird colors. If they stay weird for too long, stop looking directly. Sub-Zero Atmospheric Sampling, SZAS, Drone Protocol, SZAS Drone Gamma operates autonomously. Monitor sample returns. If gamma returns with cryocrystalline residue, CCR, defined as geometric ice formations exhibiting anomalous refractive indices, in the primary sample chamber, immediately initiate automated jettison sequence for the entire sample module via Emergency Disposal Chute 3, Sublevel 2. Log event code CCR jettison. Do not attempt manual analysis, storage, or direct physical contact with CCR. If the sample drone brings back weird ice crystals, dump the whole sample immediately. Don't touch it. Seismic Event Protocol, Sub-Ice Shelf Origin M2.0. Following confirmation of seismic activity originating beneath the Boreas Point ice shelf exceeding magnitude 2.0, initiate deep-scan sonar, a DSS, pulse sequence Omega 7 via the core hub console. Record all reflected acoustic signatures passively. Analysis is restricted to Level 8, Remote. Do not attempt active ping localization or physical investigation of sub-ice tremors. If the ice quakes from below, turn on the special sonar. Record everything it hears. Don't try to figure out what caused the quake. 3:33 a.m. Static window protocol. Between 3:30 a.m. and 3:36 a.m. station local time daily. Predictable ionospheric interference disrupts long-range communications. Static window. During this precise 6-minute interval, visually monitor the localized environmental monitor (LEM) display within the habitation module. Record any non-standard visual patterns, symbols, or glyphs displayed, using provided temporal logbook. Do not attempt external communication or system diagnostics during the static window. Between 3:30 and 3:36 a.m., comms go dead. Watch the little screen in my room. Write down any weird symbols it shows. Don't try to call anyone or fix anything. Biomonitor alarm. Fauna. Signature Tau exterior passive biomonitors are calibrated for known local fauna, seals, penguins near polynia zones. If monitors register an unidentified large biological signature exhibiting Tau waveform characteristics, erratic high-energy pulses, see spectral chart Tau 1, approaching within 1 km radius, immediately engage perimeter deterrent field, PDF, alpha via Core Hub console. If signature Tau persists or breaches 500 m radius despite active PDF, personnel must retreat to the Central Core Hub emergency shelter, sublevel 4, and seal internal blast doors. Await further instructions via emergency hardline if functional. Direct observation of Tau signatures is strongly contraindicated. If the animal sensors pick up a specific weird signal from something big and close, turn on the fence zapper. If it keeps coming, run to the basement bunker and lock the door. Don't look at it. Weeks bled into one another, marked only by the station clock and the shifting patterns of the aurora outside. The isolation was absolute. Days, or what passed for them in the perpetual darkness, were filled with the hum of machinery, the clatter of keyboards as I logged data, the whisper of recycled air. Nights were spent staring at spectral readouts, monitoring the silent dance of atmospheric gases, or watching the ghostly green and violet curtains of the aurora australis ripple across the stardusted sky through the shielded viewport in the Core Hub. The protocols remained mostly theoretical. Auroras flared, but spectrometer delta showed only the familiar, beautiful lines of excited oxygen and nitrogen. No weird colors. No protocol Sigma R9 needed. SZAS drone Gamma returned daily with mundane samples of ice crystals and atmospheric gases. No CCR. No jettison required. The ice shelf groaned and shifted occasionally, triggering minor seismic alerts, but nothing originating beneath the station, nothing requiring the deep scan sonar. The 3:33 a.m. static window, Rule 4, was punctual, and initially, unremarkable. As clock ticked over to 3:30, the long-range comm status light would blink amber, then red. Interference. For precisely 6 minutes, I'd watch the small LEM display in my quarters. Usually, it just showed standard meteorological icons, wind speed, temperature, pressure. Sometimes, during heavy atmospheric conditions, it would display static or generic error symbols. Nothing resembling patterns or glyphs. I logged no anomalous display nightly. Then, about a month in, during a particularly intense auroral display, AKP index hit 8, things started to shift. First, the aurora itself. Spectrometer delta started picking up transient, unidentifiable spectral lines mixed in with the usual green and red, brief flashes of deep indigo, flashes of a color that wasn't quite orange but felt hot somehow. They never persisted for more than a few seconds, always under the 5-minute threshold for ceasing direct observation, Rule 1. But they were there. Logged, transient non-standard spectral emissions detected during KP8 event. Silas, the GARC AI, accessed via my console acknowledged. Correlating with solar wind data. Non-committal, as always. Later that same day, the SZAS drone Gamma returned from its high-altitude sampling run. As the sample module docked and transferred its contents to the analysis unit, an alert flashed, CCR detected. Initiate protocol 2B immediately. Cryocrystalline residue. Rule 2. My heart leaped. Following the protocol, I hit the emergency jettison sequence for the entire sample module, not just the sample itself. Alarms blared briefly as a panel opened on the station's exterior hull, visible on camera feed for, and the module was forcefully ejected via pneumatic ram, tumbling away into the darkness over the ice shelf. Logged, CCR jettison. Silas, acknowledged. SZAS drone Gamma temporarily offline pending module recalibration. No explanation. No curiosity. Just protocol. What kind of ice crystals warranted immediate, unanalyzed disposal deep in Antarctica? The following night, at 3:33 a.m., the static window arrived as usual. Comms went dead. I watched the LEM display in my quarters. At first, the usual weather icons. Then, at 3:34, they vanished. Replaced by static. But not random static. It swirled, coalesced, then formed a shape. A complex, geometric symbol, like a multipointed star interwoven with sharp angles, glowing faintly white against the dark screen. It held for maybe 10 seconds, then dissolved back into static just before the window ended at 3:36 and the comms light blinked back to green. My hand shook as I sketched the symbol in the temporal logbook, noting the precise time. Rule 4. Record any non-standard visual patterns, symbols, or glyphs. This was definitely non-standard. What did it mean? Was it interference? Or a message? From what? Connected to the weird aurora? The CCR? The station felt different now. Less like an isolated research post, more like a listening station on the edge of something vast and potentially hostile. The protocols no longer felt like eccentric precautions, they felt like desperate measures against phenomena that GARC, or at least Finch, understood far better, and feared far more, than they let on. And I was the sole, unprepared sentry, watching, listening, logging the whispers from the edge of the known world. The appearance of the geometric symbol during the 3:33 a.m. static window became a nightly occurrence. Always the same intricate, multi-pointed star interwoven with sharp angles, burning white against the LEM display for precisely 10 seconds before dissolving back into static. I sketched it meticulously in the temporal logbook each time, noting minor variations, sometimes a faint halo, sometimes seeming to rotate slightly. Each log entry felt like adding another piece to a puzzle I couldn't comprehend, delivered by a ghost in the ionosphere. Silas offered no insight, merely acknowledging the logs, acknowledged. Continue monitoring. The isolation began to wear thin. Days blurred into an endless cycle of checks and logs, punctuated by the unsettling knowledge that something was happening just beyond the reach of my senses, or perhaps through them. The weird spectral lines in the aurora became more frequent, the flashes of indigo and hot orange appearing even during less intense KP events. SZAS drone Gamma remained offline, Silas citing ongoing remote recalibration complexities. I suspected it was grounded permanently after bringing back the forbidden CCR. My only real connection to the outside world was the weekly encrypted health and status check-in with Dr. Sharma. A brief, stilted exchange via text-based interface, carefully avoiding any mention of the addendum protocols or the anomalies. Station nominal, she'd type. Nominal, I'd reply, the lie tasting like ash. Personnel status. Stable. A necessary charade, apparently. Any deviation, any hint of the strangeness, felt like it would break some unspoken rule far more critical than Finch's addendum. Then, the icequakes began. Not the usual groans of the shelf settling. These were sharp, localized tremors, originating directly beneath the station, just as Rule 3 warned. The first one was minor, barely a magnitude 1.5, a brief rattle that shook the coffee cup on my console. But it triggered the protocol. Seismic event detected. Sub-ice shelf origin. Magnitude 1.6. Initiate DSS pulse sequence Omega 7. My hand hesitated over the console. Rule 3. Initiate deep scan sonar. Record signatures passively. Analysis restricted. This felt different from checking gauges or logging lights. This felt like actively pinging the abyss below. But the protocol was clear. I initiated Omega 7. A low, powerful pulse, subsonic and bone-jarring, emanated from deep within the station's foundations, traveling down into the ice, into the rock, into whatever lay beneath. The core hub vibrated faintly. On the main screen, the passive sonar display came alive, mapping the reflected acoustic signatures returning from the depths. Mostly, it showed what was expected: layers of ice, bedrock, known geological strata. But there were inconsistencies. Pockets where the sonar signal seemed to be absorbed entirely, creating holes in the data. And faint, complex reflections from far deeper than the bore shaft should reach, hinting at structures or cavities that weren't on any geological map GARC had provided. And within the reflected signal itself, embedded like a watermark, was a faint echo of the same complex, multi-layered infrasound I'd felt during the signature Kilo event. Logged DSS Omega 7 initiated post M1.6 sub-ice event. Passive recording active. Anomalous absorption zones and deep structure reflections noted. Kilo frequency harmonics present in return signal. Silas, acknowledged. Data tagged for Level 8 analysis. Level 8. Way above my clearance. The sub-ice quakes continued sporadically over the next week, each one slightly stronger than the last. M1.8, M2.1, triggering another DSS pulse. M1.9 each time, the DSS revealed the same strange absorption zones, the deep reflections, the lingering kilo harmonics. It felt like something down there was stirring, shifting, and the station was perched directly on its doorstep. And with the quakes came a change in the 3:33 AM static window displays. The geometric symbol still appeared, but now it was often preceded or followed by other images, fleeting, distorted. Sometimes, it looked like complex circuitry diagrams, flickering too fast to comprehend. Other times, like biological structures, cells dividing, cilia waving, things that looked disturbingly like eyes opening and closing in the static. And once, just for a fraction of a second, I saw a face. Gaunt, pale, eyes burning with a cold, green light, horribly familiar, Alastair Finch, founder of this icy tomb, his portrait made manifest in the ionospheric noise. Logged everything, sketches becoming frantic, descriptions more desperate. Silas, acknowledged. Always just acknowledged. Then came signature Tau. It was late, nearing the end of my awaking cycle. Snow howled outside, reducing visibility to zero beyond the core hub viewports. I was running final system checks before retreating to the habitation module. Suddenly, a new alarm, sharp and piercing. Warning, BIO monitor alert. Unidentified signature detected. Waveform match, TAU. Range, 1.2 kilometers vector, approaching station. Rule 5. Signature tau. Large biological. Erratic high-energy pulses. Approaching. My blood turned to ice. Seals? Penguins? Not out here, not this far onto the shelf, not in this weather. And not with a tau waveform. The spectral chart flashed on screen, jagged, chaotic spikes of energy unlike any natural biosignature I'd ever seen. Silas! I yelled instinctively at the empty room, forgetting protocol required console input. Confirm signature tau. Signature tau confirmed, Silas's voice replied instantly, startling me. Range 1.1 kilometers. Recommend immediate engagement of perimeter deterrent field alpha per protocol 5A. My hands flew to the designated console. PDF alpha. Covered switch. Flip. Engage. A low, powerful hum vibrated through the station, distinct from the core or the DSS. On the exterior camera feeds that could still pierce the blizzard, I saw a faint shimmer ripple outwards from the station's perimeter masts, the deterrent field activating. PDF alpha active. Flash the console. Signature TAU range, 950 m persisting. It wasn't stopping. The field was supposed to deter large fauna, disrupt sensory organs. Whatever this was, it didn't care. Signature TAU range, 800 m vector constant. Silas. PDF ineffective. Signature tau persisting on approach. Acknowledged. Monitoring, was the infuriatingly calm reply. Signature TAU range, 600 m. My heart hammered. Rule 5 again. If signature tau persists or breaches 500 m radius despite active PDF, personnel must retreat to the Central Core Hub Emergency Shelter, Sublevel 4, and seal internal blast doors. Signature TAU range, 500 m, breaching PDF perimeter. That's it. I yelled, abandoning the console. Initiating Protocol 5B. Retreating to emergency shelter. I slammed the emergency alert button for the shelter, a formality, as I was the only one here, and sprinted out of the core hub, down the main corridor towards the central stairwell access. Behind me, I could hear the biomonitor alarm shrieking, the tau signature's erratic pulses now audible even over the klaxon, like monstrous, crackling static. Sublevel 4. Deeper than the labs, deeper than the resonance chamber access, just above the geothermal core itself. The emergency shelter entrance was a heavy, bank vault-style door set into the concrete wall, manual wheel lock prominently displayed. I threw myself at the wheel, spinning it frantically, the mechanism groaning. Signature TAU range, 300 m hull proximity alert. It was close. Could I even make it? The wheel finally spun free. I yanked the impossibly heavy door open, revealing a small, stark, metal-lined chamber beyond, rations, water, oxygen tanks, a single hardwired comm panel. Survival basics. Just as I scrambled inside, a sound reached me from above, echoing down the stairwell. Not cracking static this time. A physical sound. A heavy, chitinous clicking. And a low, guttural chuffing, like some colossal insect clearing its throat. It was inside the station. How? The exterior hatches were sealed, rated to withstand polar gales. Had it breached the hull? Or found another way in? Slamming the vault door shut, I spun the wheel frantically, engaging the multiple locking bolts. Safe? Was anywhere in this place truly safe? I collapsed onto the cold metal floor of the shelter, gasping for breath, listening. The clicking and chuffing sounds were gone, muffled by the thick door and the layers of rock and ice. Only the faint, steady hum of the geothermal core far below remained. Then, the hardwired comm panel beside the door crackled to life. Not Silas's voice. Not Dr. Sharma. A voice I hadn't heard before. Male, calm, professional, but with an edge of profound weariness. Dr. Arkwright. This is Director Graves. I assume you have reached the emergency shelter. Graves. The administrator. The name from Sharma's earlier message about the cartographer. Yes. Yes, I'm here. What the hell is Signature Tau? It's inside the station. A sigh crackled over the line. Signature Tau is complicated, Doctor. Not entirely biological. More resonant. Attracted by the recent Kilo events, the DSS pulses, perhaps even the echo sample. The PDF field only agitates it. We hoped it wouldn't breach. Hoped. What is it? We don't know for certain, Graves admitted, his voice low. Finch encountered it. Theorized it was a non-corporeal entity capable of limited physical manifestation under extreme energy conditions. Something that hunts resonance signatures. Something drawn from elsewhere, perhaps facilitated by his resonator experiments. Or perhaps native to the deepest strata beneath the ice. Non-corporeal? Hunting resonance? My mind flashed to the spectral ghosts in Silas's core, the echoes in the orbs. Was this related? Silas has been compromised. Director, I blurted out, remembering Petrova's contingency. Spectral drift, ghosts in the core matrix. Another sigh, heavier this time. We suspected as much after Petrova's incident. Silas seems particularly susceptible to the Kilo harmonics. The AI may now be actively attracting Tau, rather than monitoring it. So what do we do? I pleaded. I'm trapped down here. That thing is roaming the station. The shelter is rated for extreme environmental and energetic events, Doctor. You are relatively safe for now. But Tau signatures rarely linger. It will likely investigate, then move on. The primary concern now. Graves paused. Is the echo sample S001. Its resonance is acting as a beacon, amplified by the compromised Silas. It's drawing Tau towards it. Towards Lab 3. But Lab 3 is sealed. Secondary containment was active. Secondary containment will not hold against a focused Tau manifestation, Graves stated grimly. If Tau reaches the echo sample, the resulting resonance cascade could destabilize the geothermal core far beyond what you stabilized earlier. It could potentially amplify the Kilo signature exponentially. Open a permanent conduit. My blood ran cold. A permanent conduit? Like the cartographer's window, but real? What can I do? Petrova's contingency 7, Graves said, his voice barely a whisper. Hydroponics Bay Gamma. The acoustic key derived from ESA001's own resonance. It's our only viable countermeasure. A biological failsafe Finch engineered. Irreversible, as the file likely warned. But potentially stabilizing. Stabilizing how? What is compound sigma? What's in bay gamma? Compound sigma isn't a toxin, Dr. Graves said, his voice filled with a terrible gravity. It's a nutrient solution. And bay gamma doesn't contain dormant flora. It contains him. Finch's first and last attempt at direct interface. His keeper dot. Is this all of you? There's no one else? Just you 7. I ask again, my eyes darting between the abomination clinging to the ceiling and the terrified faces before me. Most of them are too stricken by the monster overhead to respond, but 2 of them, including the girl with curly black hair, manage a jerky nod. Game's kisses. The creature croaks from its chest mouth, its 6 arms shifting its position slightly on the ceiling. Love, love alone, flower in the cold field. Its ramblings are nonsensical, disjointed, but the predatory stillness it holds is anything but. That thing's our cue, I repeat, grabbing the 2 nearest kids, the curly-haired girl and a boy I don't recognize, and physically shoving them towards the bookstore entrance, back the way we came. Move! Now! Back to the tunnel! But Bryce wrenches himself free from my initial push. He glares at me, then up at the abomination, then back at me, his face a mask of desperate determination mixed with burgeoning terror. No. We came here for a reason. Typhon, he shouts again, his voice cracking this time. Show yourself. We know what needs to be done. You idiot. I roar, turning back as the other kids hesitate, caught between their fear of the creature and Bryce's suicidal conviction. It's right there. That is Typhon's doing. Get out. It's not gonna hurt us. Bryce insists, though his voice lacks conviction. He fumbles in his oversized sweater pocket, pulling out a small, dog-eared notebook. Rex wrote it down. The ritual. We just need. He frantically flips through the pages. The abomination on the ceiling shifts again. Its chest mouth opens wider, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth, and a low clicking sound emanates from it. It's losing patience. Bryce, stop, the curly-haired girl cries out, pulling at his arm. He's right. We need to go. No. Bryce shoves her away. We can free them. Free Rex. Typhon owes us. He finds the page he's looking for. Okay, it says. Speak the name held captive, bind the echo to the stone. He looks around wildly. The statue. It has to be the statue. He lunges towards the massive marble titan that dominates the room, notebook held open. The boy in the blue hoodie hesitates for a split second, then yells, "I've got your back, man," and follows him. The 4th girl, the one who hadn't spoken much, lets out a small whimper but then squares her shoulders. "We're with you," she cries, darting after them. "You fools! You'll never see daylight again." I scream after them, my voice hoarse with frustration and dawning horror. The abomination above lets out a series of sharp clicks and begins to descend the wall with unnatural speed, its 6 arms finding purchase on bookshelves and the marble statue itself as it scuttles towards the defiant trio. I spin back to the remaining 4 teenagers huddled near the entrance. Their faces are sheet white, eyes wide with terror. Fine. I snarl, the adrenaline making my voice harsh. They want to disappear so badly, then so be it. Scum! Anyone else want to die down here in the dark? I am met with stricken silence, punctuated by the frantic rustling of Bryce's notebook pages and the wet, clicking sounds of the approaching abomination. Good. Then let's go. I grab the curly-haired girl and the boy beside her again, not gently this time, and start running, pulling them forcibly towards the mall corridor. Thankfully, the other two follow without needing further coercion. We burst out of the bookstore just as I hear Bryce begin to chant something incoherent from beside the Titan statue, followed immediately by a high-pitched, guttural screech from the Abomination. We don't look back. We run. Back through the distorted mall corridors, the strange symbols on the storefronts blurring past. Back past the fountain with its coiled marble serpent. I risk a glance up as we pass. Typhon is nowhere to be seen, but the air around the statue feels colder, charged. We stumble towards the entrance to Gaia, the mirror image of Tartarus. The blue-green peeling walls seem almost welcoming compared to the chaos we just fled. All right, in you go. I pant, gesturing frantically towards the tunnel entrance burrowing into the back wall. Back through the tunnel. Now! The curly-haired girl stops at the threshold, turning to me, her chest heaving, eyes pleading. What about? She stops herself, remembering my warning about names. What about the others? We can't just leave them. I clench my jaw, exhaustion and grim reality settling in. They made their choice, I say, my voice flat. I ain't their babysitter. She grabs me by the sleeve, her grip surprisingly strong. Please, sir. Please? I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry we made you come down here, and I'm sorry we all thought this was a good idea. But you can't just leave them. I look at the desperate faces of the 4 kids before me, then mentally picture the scene back in the bookstore, Bryce, the notebook, the descending horror. One of the boys speaks up, his voice trembling but resolute. He'll never give up. Never. If you don't go after him, then he's gonna die. Please. We're sorry. I blow air out through my nose, running a hand through my hair. The internal conflict is immense. My duty is clear, don't let anyone out. My promise to myself, my instinct, is to save who I can. Going back for Bryce and the others is almost certainly suicide, and it risks these 4 as well. But leaving them? I ain't giving you my key, I tell them firmly. And if I go to unlock the Tartarus door for you, then by the time I get back down here, it'll be too late. If I do go after them, who knows what'll happen? There's no telling when I'll be back. You might have to wait for the next person on shift to come and let you out, I add grimly. That's not so bad, one of the boys replies, trying to sound brave. How long would that be? The curly-haired girl asks. I glance at my watch. 2.5 hours, or so. Well, that's not so bad, the boy repeats, though less confidently. Perhaps not, I pause, letting the weight of the next word sink in. But what? The girl prompts, her voice filled with apprehension. But whoever comes to let you out will be bound to the rules, I think, just like myself. I meet her eyes. Watch Tartarus. Don't let anyone in. Don't let anyone out. But there's no telling whether or not they'd actually let you out. I let the implication hang. We're not supposed to let anyone out. And the longer you stay in Tartarus, in the realm below, well, the worse it gets. A long, heavy silence falls over the group. The faint, sad orchestral music seems to swell slightly in the background. The 4 kids look at each other, a silent, terrified communication passing between them. Finally, the curly-haired girl turns back to me, her expression resolved. Guys, she asks her friend softly, and they nod, a mixture of fear and determination on their faces. She looks back at me. Please? We can wait. Just go after them. I stare at them, at their youthful faces choosing potential damnation for the sake of their friends. Damn it! I consider their request, weighing the impossible choices, and then swear quietly under my breath. God's sake! I point towards the tunnel entrance in the Gaia store. Head up, anyway. I don't want you creeping around down here. Head up to Tartarus and wait for me there. As they hesitate, relief warring with fear, I start jogging away again, back towards the bookstore, back towards the chaos. I turn and look over my shoulder, jabbing a finger back at them. Hurry! And don't touch those damn mannequins. As they finally scramble into the Gaia store and towards the tunnel exit, I let out a heavy sigh and carry onwards. Onwards through the purplish light of the world below. For better or for worse. God help me. Racing back through the warped mall, the faint, unnerving orchestra music seemed to follow me, swirling around the strange angles and impossible architecture. My own footsteps echoed unnaturally loud in the violet gloom. Reaching the bookstore again felt like stepping back into a fever dream. I put a hand on the glass pane of the window, peering cautiously inside before pushing through. The scene was quiet. Too quiet. The abomination, Typhon's plaything, was gone. The massive marble titan still cowered, its stony face frozen in eternal rage and fear. But Bryce, Blue Hoodie, Jackson, was it, and the girl, Emma Ray, were nowhere to be seen. Had the creature taken them? Had they fled deeper into the labyrinth? Bryce? I called out, my voice hushed but sharp, trying not to attract unwanted attention. Jackson? Emma Ray. No response. Just the whisper-soft music and the faint hum that seemed to emanate from the very walls of this place. My eyes scanned the room. Books lay scattered on the floor near the Titan statue. A few display stands were overturned. Signs of a struggle, definitely. But no obvious trails, no blood, thank God. Where would they go? Bryce had been chanting something, trying some ritual from Rex's notes by the statue just before the abomination attacked. Had it worked? Had it transported them somewhere? Unlikely. More likely, they either ran or were taken. I walked towards the Titan, my borrowed massage chair muscles protesting the exertion. Circling the base of the colossal statue, I scanned the floor, the lower reaches of the marble. Scuff marks, scattered books, weight. Bryce's notebook. It wasn't where I'd seen him drop it near the Titan's leg. It was lying near the opposite side of the room, closer to the double doors leading deeper into the mall's labyrinthine corridors, the ones Bryce had been determined to enter earlier. Had he retrieved it? Had they actually gone that way after all? I snatched up the notebook again. It was still open to the same page, but tucked inside was a single, pressed, impossibly white flower, similar to the rose I'd seen held by the mannequin near Gaia, but smaller, more delicate. Where did this come from? A message? From Typhon? Or something else? The faint orchestral music seemed to swell slightly, adding a melancholic note. Rex's notes mentioned this heart. Where Typhon is weakest, resonates below the statues. Below the statues. The bookstore only had the Titan. But the corridor beyond, the layout down here warped, changed. Maybe there were other statues deeper in? Was Bryce still pursuing that insane quest, even after the abomination attack? My gaze drifted towards the double doors leading deeper. They stood slightly ajar. A faint draft, colder than the ambient air, seemed to whisper out from the gap, carrying a different undertone beneath the orchestral strains, a low, guttural chanting, almost subliminal. Hesitantly, I approached the doors, notebook clutched in one hand, my Tartarus key held ready in the other. Peeking through the gap, darkness. A long corridor stretching into blackness, lined with more of those distorted, unreadable storefronts. The chanting was clearer now, seeming to echo from the depths. And the air, it felt heavy, charged, carrying the same sense of ancient wrongness I felt near the hole in Tartarus. This was insane. My duty was to get the kids out, not follow them deeper into potential oblivion. The four back in Tartarus were waiting, their safety dependent on me, or the next guard. But Bryce? Rex's brother, and maybe, just maybe, Abby. Damn it, I muttered. My conscience wouldn't let me leave them. Not yet. Pocketing Bryce's notebook, and the strange flower, I pushed through the double doors, letting them swing quietly shut behind me, immersing myself in the deeper darkness, the cold draft, and the low, unsettling chant that seemed to beckon me further into the mall's twisted heart. The faint purple light seemed weaker here, shadows pooling thick and deep in the corners and doorways. The corridor ahead wasn't straight. It curved gently, walls lined with storefronts displaying things that shifted uncomfortably in my peripheral vision, mannequins that seemed to move, objects that rearranged themselves, shadows that didn't quite match their source. The chanting grew louder, resolving into multiple voices, guttural and rhythmic, echoing as if from a vast, open space ahead. As I rounded a bend, the corridor opened up dramatically. I stopped, stunned. Before me lay not another section of mall, but a vast, natural cavern, stretching upwards into absolute darkness far above the mall's false ceiling. Water dripped from unseen stalactites, echoing in the immense space. The floor was rough, uneven rock, sloping downwards towards the center. And in the center, bathed in a sickly green luminescence emanating from phosphorescent fungi clinging to the rocks, was the source of the chanting. Figures. At least a dozen, maybe more, humanoid but disturbingly thin, almost skeletal, draped in tattered, dark robes, circled slowly around a rough-hewn stone altar. They moved with a jerky, ritualistic gait, heads bowed, voices raised in the monotonous, guttural chant. The air here was thick, smelling of damp earth, decay, and something else, something sharp, metallic. And on the altar, something lay shrouded, indistinct in the green gloom. My eyes scanned the edges of the cavern. Near the back, partially hidden by rock formations, I saw them. Bryce, Jackson, and Emma Ray. Crouched low, watching the ritual, faces a mixture of terror and morbid fascination. Bryce held Rex's key out again, not threateningly, but as if testing the air, sensing something. Had they followed the chanting? Stumbled upon this ceremony? Before I could decide whether to call out or attempt a stealthy approach, one of the chanting figures faltered. It stumbled, its jerky movements becoming more erratic. It let out a low moan, clutching its head. The others ignored it, continuing their slow circle, their voices unwavering. The stumbling figure groaned again, louder this time, then collapsed to its knees, its robed form shuddering violently. Its head snapped up, thin neck craning towards me? Or towards the corridor I'd emerged from. A low hiss escaped its unseen lips. The chanting faltered as the other figures turned, slowly, their shadowed faces all directed towards my position at the cavern entrance. The green light glinted off, something. Not eyes. Smooth, polished obsidian masks, perhaps. Reflecting the fungal glow like dead stars. They had sensed me. The ritual paused, replaced by a heavy, expectant silence, broken only by the drip of water and the ragged breathing of the collapsed figure. The The silence stretched, thick and heavy as the damp cavern air, broken only by the rhythmic drip of water from unseen heights and the ragged gasps of the collapsed figure near the altar. A dozen pairs of unseen eyes, hidden behind those smooth, dark masks or whatever they were, fixed on my position at the corridor entrance. The guttural chanting had ceased, replaced by a low, collective hum that seemed to vibrate in the very rock beneath my feet. Across the cavern, near the back, Bryce, Jackson, and Emma Ray remained frozen, crouched behind a cluster of stalagmites, their faces pale masks of terror in the sickly green fungal glow. Bryce still held Rex's key, not pointedly, but clutched tightly, as if for protection. The figure that had collapsed shuddered again, letting out a long, drawn-out groan that devolved into a wet, choking sound. It pawed weakly at its throat, thin fingers scrabbling against the dark robe. The other figures remained utterly still, watching me, waiting. What were they waiting for? My mind raced. Retreat back down the corridor? Too risky. They knew I was here. They might pursue. Confront them? Insane. There were too many, and I had no idea what they were capable of. My only weapon was my Tartarus key, heavy and useless in my pocket unless I planned on locking something. Then, the figure on the ground convulsed violently one last time, arching its back, and then fell utterly still. A collective sigh seemed to ripple through the remaining figures, a soft exhalation like wind through dead leaves. Slowly, deliberately, they turned their masked faces away from me, back towards the rough-hewn stone altar in the center of the cavern. The guttural chanting resumed, low and monotonous, as if nothing had happened. Two of the figures detached themselves from the circle and moved towards their fallen companion. Without ceremony, they grasped the limp form by its arms and legs and began dragging it away, towards a dark fissure in the cavern wall, disappearing into the shadows. Had they just ignored me? Decided I wasn't a threat? Or was this part of the ritual? My confusion warred with a primal urge to flee. I risked a glance towards the kids. They were still frozen, watching the chanting figures, seemingly unsure whether to run or stay hidden. My attention was drawn back to the altar as the chanting intensified. The remaining figures, 10 of them now, raised their hands, skeletal fingers splayed towards the shrouded object lying upon the stone slab. The green fungal light pulsed brighter, synchronizing with their voices, casting their emaciated forms in stark, writhing relief. What was on the altar? Curiosity, perhaps morbid and definitely foolish, kept me rooted to the spot. From my position, I could only see a vague, lumpy shape beneath a dark, heavy cloth, roughly human-sized. As the chant reached a crescendo, one figure, taller than the rest, stepped forward. It reached out a trembling hand and slowly, reverently, pulled back the cloth. My breath hitched. It wasn't a body. It was a mannequin. Identical to the ones upstairs in Tartarus. Faceless, smooth, pale grey, posed lying flat on its back. But this one was different. Embedded in its chest, where a heart should be, pulsed a faint, internal light, not green like the fungi, but a deep, sickly red, casting unsettling shadows within its hollow form. The tall figure produced something from within its robes, a small, dark, intricately carved bowl. Another figure brought forth a pitcher, pouring a thick, viscous, dark liquid into the bowl. Blood? Oil? Something else entirely? The tall figure then dipped its fingers into the bowl and began to paint symbols onto the mannequin's smooth, featureless face, chanting louder now, the words still guttural, alien, but filled with a disturbing reverence. My mind flashed back to Bryce's notebook, Rex's frantic scrawls. Ritual requires name plus binding agent plus conduit. Was this it? Was the mannequin the conduit? The dark liquid the binding agent? What about the name? Just as the thought crossed my mind, the tall figure finished painting. It stepped back, raising its hands again. And the mannequin on the altar spoke. Not with a voice, but with an echo, a resonance that filled the cavern, vibrating in my teeth, echoing the multi-layered whispers I'd heard near the crimson orbs back at the Institute, or perhaps, the whispers from the Folio Secundus wing. It wasn't words, but pure, raw emotion, agony, confusion, terror, loss, washing over me, threatening to drown my own thoughts. An echo of a consciousness trapped, fragmented, suffering. The chanting figure swayed, seeming to draw energy from the mannequin's psychic scream. The red light in its chest pulsed brighter, faster. Across the cavern, Emma Ray let out a muffled sob, burying her face in Jackson's shoulder. Bryce stared, transfixed, Rex's key held forgotten in his hand. This was wrong. Horrifically wrong. Whatever ritual this was, it felt like torture, like the desecration of a soul. My hand instinctively went to my pocket, touching Rex's key, then my own. Catalyst. Ms. Vance's log. The key wasn't just for opening doors. Before I could fully form a plan, or perhaps lose my nerve, Bryce moved. He stood up abruptly from behind the stalagmites, startling his friends, startling the chanting figures. He held Rex's key high, not pointing it, but presenting it, stepping out into the green gloom. "Stop," he yelled, his voice cracking but clear, echoing through the cavern, momentarily silencing the chant, silencing the mannequin's psychic scream. The figures turned, their masked faces fixing on him. The red light in the mannequin's chest dimmed slightly, the echo lessening. "Let him go," Bryce demanded, taking another step forward. "Whoever that is, let them go. Rex wouldn't have wanted this." The tall figure near the altar tilted its masked head, regarding Bryce with unnerving stillness. Then, it hissed, a dry, papery sound filled with ancient malice. "Rex? The failed guardian? His desires are irrelevant. The echo must be indexed. Bound. Stabilized. He's not just an echo," Bryce retorted, finding his courage. "He was? Darren. Darrenar. Rex saved him." The moment Bryce spoke the name, the cavern reacted. The green fungal light flared violently. The mannequin on the altar convulsed, the red light in its chest exploding outwards in a blinding flash, accompanied by a deafening psychic shriek that threw me and the kids backwards, slamming us against the rock walls. The robed figures staggered, shielding their masked faces. When my vision cleared, the red light was gone. The mannequin lay still, inert, seemingly empty. The chanting figures were regaining their composure, turning their ire towards Bryce, who stood frozen, stunned by the force of the outburst he'd apparently triggered. And the tall figure, it slowly lowered its hands, its masked gaze fixed on Bryce with lethal intensity. "You spoke the name," it hissed, its voice colder, sharper. "You carry the catalyst. You interfered with the indexing. Transgression requires recompense." It raised a skeletal hand, pointing directly at Bryce. And from the shadows behind Bryce, near where the kids still huddled, something detached itself from the wall. Pale. Multi-limbed. With a large mouth in the center of its chest. An abomination. Manifesting directly from the cavern's resonant energy, drawn by the name, the key, the interrupted ritual. It scuttled forward silently, heading straight for the unsuspecting Bryce. The abomination detached itself from the shadowed cavern wall with a wet, tearing sound, its pale, multi-limbed form unfolding like a grotesque origami nightmare. It wasn't one of Typhon's stark white playthings. This felt older, cruder, its skin slick and grey, its chest mouth gaping wider, lined with teeth like shattered bone. It scuttled silently across the rock floor on 6 spindly, insectoid legs, ignoring the chanting figures, ignoring me, its focus entirely on Bryce, who stood frozen, oblivious, caught between the shock of the mannequin's psychic explosion and the lethal gaze of the tall, robed figure by the altar. "Bryce, behind you!" I roared, shoving myself off the wall and scrambling forward. Jackson and Emma Ray screamed, pointing, paralyzed by fear. The tall figure near the altar hissed again, a sound of pure frustration and malice. "Interference! The indexing falters! Seal the echo! Purge the transgressors!" As if responding to the command, the other 9 robed figures broke their formation, turning not towards the abomination, but towards us, me and the terrified teenagers huddled near the cavern entrance. They raised their hands, skeletal fingers pointed, and the guttural chant shifted, becoming sharper, more aggressive, resonating with a dangerous energy that made the air crackle. The abomination was almost upon Bryce. No time for finesse. I grabbed the nearest loose object, a fist-sized chunk of rock, and hurled it with all my might, not at the abomination, but at the altar, aiming for the now inert mannequin. My aim was true. The rock struck the mannequin's smooth, faceless head with a loud crack, sending fragments flying. The effect was instantaneous. The advancing robed figures faltered, their chant breaking, several clutching their masked heads as if struck by a physical blow. The tall figure shrieked, a sound of pure agony, staggering back from the altar. The abomination, just inches from Bryce, also froze, letting out a confused, clicking screech, its focus momentarily broken. Bryce finally snapped out of his stupor, spinning around just as the abomination paused. Seeing the creature, he screamed, stumbling backwards, tripping over his own feet and falling hard onto the rock floor. "Get up! Move!" I yelled, running towards him, brandishing my Tartarus key, hoping its symbolic power might offer some meager defense. Jackson and Emma Ray, spurred into action, rushed to help Bryce scramble away from the momentarily stunned creature. The tall robed figure recovered quickly, its rage palpable even behind the mask. "Desecration! The conduit suffers! Contain the catalyst carrier! Retrieve the name!" It pointed directly at Bryce, then at the key still clutched in his hand, then at me. The abomination shook its grotesque head, its focus returning, and scuttled rapidly towards the fleeing teenagers. Simultaneously, the 9 robed figures surged forward, ignoring their collapsed leader, who seemed incapacitated by the damage to the mannequin, their jerky movements becoming unnervingly fast as they converged on my position near the cavern entrance. I backpedaled, waving my key like a madman. "Stay back! Lower levels! Worse levels below!" I tried the familiar warding phrase, but these figures weren't simple abominations. They seemed driven by a different, more focused intent. They didn't even hesitate. One reached me, its skeletal hand lashing out from beneath the dark robe. I dodged, swinging my fist, connecting solidly with its masked face. The mask cracked, revealing not bone, but swirling darkness beneath, and the figure staggered back with a hiss. But another was already flanking me, grabbing my arm, its grip impossibly strong, cold seeping through my jacket. I twisted, kicking out, breaking its grip, but a third one slammed into my back, sending me sprawling onto the damp rock floor. They swarmed me, their cold, strong hands pinning my limbs, the smell of dust, decay, and metallic blood overwhelming. I struggled, lashing out, but there were too many. Through the tangle of dark robes, I saw the abomination reach the teenagers near the back fissure. Jackson shoved Bryce towards the dark opening, the one the figures had dragged their fallen comrade into earlier. Emma Ray screamed as the abomination's chest mouth lunged, tearing a chunk from Jackson's shoulder. He roared in pain but kept pushing Bryce towards the fissure. "Go! Run!" Jackson screamed, turning to face the creature, armed only with his desperate courage. Emma Ray hesitated, then scrambled into the fissure after Bryce. The abomination, ignoring Jackson for a moment, turned its attention back towards the altar, towards the damaged mannequin, letting out a series of agitated clicks. The tall robed figure, still near the altar, seemed to be recovering, slowly rising to its feet, its masked gaze burning holes into me. Pinned beneath the weight of the robed figures, I felt a cold hand fumbling at my pocket, searching. My key. They wanted my key too. Why? Desperation clawed at me. I couldn't let them take it. Couldn't let them trap me here. My gaze fell on the struggling figure whose mask I'd cracked. The swirling darkness beneath, it looked familiar. Like the void within Typhon's eyes, like the blackness inside the reliquary. Not human. Something else wearing human form. Suddenly, an image flashed in my mind, Darren, the naked man expelled from the abomination, saved by speaking his name. Speak the name held captive. Bryce had tried it on the mannequin, triggered chaos. Could it work on these things? They weren't abominations, but they weren't human either. Echoes? Bound servants? Charlotte! I screamed, remembering one of the first names I'd seen on a mannequin upstairs, initial R. The figure pinning my right arm froze. Its masked head snapped towards me. The swirling darkness behind the cracked mask seemed to pulse. Jaden! I yelled, guessing another art name. The figure holding my left leg faltered, its grip loosening slightly. It was working. The names, the echoes bound to Rex, perhaps, were disrupting them. Zach! I shouted, trying an S name, hoping it wasn't guard-specific. The figure on my chest hissed, recoiling slightly. They were vulnerable to the names. Just like the abominations, perhaps even more so. But I didn't know enough names. And the tall figure by the altar was almost fully upright now, radiating pure menace. I needed a distraction. Something bigger. My eyes darted around the cavern, past the struggling figures, towards the fissure where Bryce and Emma Ray had disappeared, where Jackson now lay grievously wounded, trying to fend off the confused abomination. The fissure, where did it lead? Then, I saw him. Just inside the fissure's entrance, partially obscured by shadow. Jackson! Not fighting anymore. Lying still. But beside him, Typhon. In his pure white, black-eyed form, crouched like a predator, watching the chaos with cold amusement. He hadn't vanished. He'd been waiting. Observing. And he met my gaze across the cavern floor, a slow, terrible grin spreading across his face. He raised one white finger to his lips. Shush. He wasn't going to intervene. He was enjoying the show. Enjoying my failure. Rage, cold and pure, surged through me. Rage at Typhon, at these robed creatures, at Bryce's recklessness, at Rex's failures, at my own inability to protect anyone. Rex! I roared, putting every ounce of desperation and fury into the name, directing it not just at the figures pinning me, but at the entire cavern, at the silent altar, at the watching Typhon. Rex! Your echoes suffer. Your failure binds them. Recompense! The effect was cataclysmic. The cavern screamed. Not just the figures, but the rock, the air itself. The green fungal light exploded outwards, then imploded into darkness. The mannequin on the altar shattered, the stone slab cracking beneath it. The robed figures pinning me dissolved, not into dust, but into shrieking, swirling shadows, sucked backwards towards the altar before vanishing completely. The abomination near the fissure let out a final, agonized screech and collapsed, its form rapidly decaying into a puddle of grey sludge. Silence. Absolute, ringing silence. And darkness. The fungal light was gone. Only the faint, dying embers of my torch, dropped somewhere in the struggle, offered any illumination. I lay there, gasping, bruised, covered in dust, surrounded by the faint smell of ozone and decay. Across the cavern, Typhon was gone. The fissure was just a dark opening. Jackson. Bryce. Emma Ray. Slowly, painfully, I pushed myself up. My key was still in my pocket. Rex's key lay nearby on the floor, dropped during the chaos. I retrieved both. The cavern felt empty now. The ritual disrupted. The echo silenced, or dispersed. But the cost? Shivering, I made my way towards the fissure, towards where I'd last seen the kids, the weight of failure heavy upon me. My boots crunched softly on the cavern floor, now littered with dust and bone fragments from the dissolved robed figures. The silence was absolute, heavy, broken only by the faint, rhythmic dripping of water somewhere in the vast darkness above and the ragged sound of my own breathing. The fungal glow that had illuminated the cavern was gone, leaving only the pathetic, flickering embers of my dropped torch near the entrance and the faint violet haze filtering down from the distant mall corridor I'd emerged from. It wasn't enough light. Fumbling in my pocket, I pulled out my own Tartarus key, the silver one. It pulsed faintly with an internal light, similar to but weaker than the green glow of the folio back at Atherton, casting just enough illumination to see a few feet ahead. Rex's key, clutched in my other hand, remained dark, cold. I moved towards the fissure at the back of the cavern, the opening where Bryce and Emma Ray had scrambled, where Jackson had fallen. The puddle of grey sludge that was the abomination sizzled faintly, already evaporating, leaving behind only a dark stain and the lingering smell of ozone and decay. Reaching the fissure, I peered inside. It wasn't a deep chasm, more like a narrow, jagged crack in the cavern wall, leading into another passage, this one completely dark. No sign of Bryce or Emma Ray. But lying just inside the entrance, bathed in the weak light from my key, was Jackson. He was alive. Barely. His breathing was shallow, ragged. The wound on his shoulder, where the abomination had torn into him, was horrific, shredded muscle, exposed bone, bleeding sluggishly. His eyes fluttered open as my light fell on him, unfocused, filled with pain and confusion. Bryce. Emma, he whispered, his voice barely audible. They went deeper, I said softly, kneeling beside him. We need to get you out of here, kid. Can you move? He tried, groaning, but barely shifted. The abomination's attack, or maybe the psychic backlash from the ritual's disruption, had taken its toll. He wasn't going anywhere on his own. Okay, easy, I said, trying to assess the wound. It needed immediate medical attention, far beyond what I could provide. My priority had to be getting him back up to Tartarus, back to the others, maybe try calling for help, though the thought of explaining this to paramedics felt impossible. Just as I was figuring out how to lift him, a voice, smooth and cold as polished marble, echoed from the darkness deeper within the fissure. Leaving so soon, minus? Without saying goodbye. Typhon. He stepped out from the blackness, no longer in Bryce's borrowed, distorted form, but in his own preferred shape, the ghostly white, black-eyed copy of me. He glided silently, effortlessly, stopping a few feet away, regarding Jackson's broken form with cold indifference before fixing his void-like eyes on me. "You've made quite a mess," Typhon stated, a faint, mocking smile playing on his lips. "Disrupted the indexing. Dispersed my little echo collectors. Cost me a perfectly good abomination. And denied me my conversation with young Bryce. Get out of my way, Typhon," I growled, shielding Jackson protectively, holding my faintly glowing key forward. "We're leaving." Typhon chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Leaving? With him?" He gestured dismissively at Jackson. "He's tainted, minus. The abominations bite, it leaves a mark. An echo. He belongs down here now. Just like Emma Ray. Just like Bryce. My blood ran cold." "What did you do to them?" "Me." Typhon spread his white hands innocently. "I did nothing. They simply chose their path. Followed the resonance. Bryce, seeking the mythical's heart, dragged his devoted companions deeper into the labyrinth. Where echoes linger longest. Where reality thins." He tilted his head, the smile widening. "They'll become quite interesting additions, I think. Once they fully settle." "Become additions? Like the mannequins? Like the echoes trapped by the robed figures? You won't let us leave, will you?" I asked, my grip tightening on the key. "Not with him," Typhon confirmed, his gaze flicking back to Jackson. "He carries the taint. He could disrupt the balance upstairs. A loose echo, uncontrolled, messy. But you..." His black eyes fixed on me again, the mocking smile fading, replaced by that unnerving, predatory focus. "You, minus, are different. You carry Atherton's mark, however faint. You carry Rex's failure. You carry potential." He glided closer, ignoring the key I held before me. "The offer still stands, minus. Join me. Truly. Not as a servant, but as an associate. Help me understand this place, this connection between Tartarus and Gaia. Help me break Atherton's clumsy binding, harness the true power here. Together, we could reshape things. Transcend these crude limitations." He was inches away now, his black eyes like portals into nothingness, the cold radiating from him palpable. I could feel the faint pressure against my mind, tempting, seductive, promising power, knowledge, and escape from the endless, grinding duty. "What about Rex?" I forced out, trying to ignore the siren call in Typhon's presence. "What about the echoes?" "My daughter." Typhon's smile returned, cold and sharp. "Rex is irrelevant. A broken tool. The echoes? They are fuel, data, nothing more. Your daughter?" He paused, tilting his head again. "She carries potential too, doesn't she? Perhaps she could join us as well? A family reunited, under new management." Revulsion coiled in my gut. He was offering me everything, woven with the vilest threats. Using my deepest fears and loyalties against me. "No," I said, my voice low, firm. "Never." Typhon sighed, a sound like cracking ice. "Predictable. A pity." He glanced down at Jackson again, then back at me. Then you leave me little choice. He cannot leave. Typhon raised one white hand, fingers sharp as claws, energy gathering around them, dark and cold. And you will watch. You will remember the price of defiance. He lunged, not at me, but at Jackson. No time to think. No time for choices. Only reaction. I threw myself forward, shoving Jackson's inert form deeper into the fissure with one desperate heave, simultaneously bringing my own key, the Tartarus key, up in a desperate arc, aiming not to stab, but to touch Typhon's outstretched hand. Contact! Cold fire erupted where silver met white shadow. Typhon shrieked, a sound far more real, more agonized than any of his previous theatrics, recoiling violently, his hand smoking, dissolving at the edges like burning film. He stared at his damaged hand, then at my key, then back at me, his black eyes blazing with pure, undiluted hatred. The Guardian Key. Atherton's true seal. You? He surged forward again, not with calculated grace, but with raw, unrestrained fury, his white form flickering, distorting, shadows lengthening, coalescing behind him into something vast and monstrous. But as he came, Jackson, roused by my shove or the surge of energy, let out a weak groan from deeper within the fissure. And from the darkness beyond him, a new sound emerged. A low, resonant hum, pulsing rapidly, accompanied by a flash of sickly green light. Typhon faltered, his attention momentarily diverted towards the fissure's depths, towards the source of the green light, the sound of the folio. It was my only chance. Ignoring the impossible hum, ignoring Typhon's momentary distraction, I spun around and scrambled into the fissure myself, grabbing Jackson under the arms, and started dragging him, deeper into the blackness, away from Typhon, towards the pulsing green light and the low, dangerous hum of the Codex Maleficarum. Dragging Jackson's dead weight through the narrow, jagged fissure was hell. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the faint, pulsing silver light of my Guardian Key and the increasingly intense, sickly green glow emanating from the passage ahead. The low, guttural hum vibrated through the rock, seeming to resonate with something deep inside me, unsettling and strangely compelling at the same time. Jackson groaned intermittently, barely conscious, his breathing shallow. Behind us, I could hear Typhon's enraged, inhuman screech echoing from the cavern, momentarily fading as if he recoiled, then returning, closer. He was pursuing us. The fissure opened abruptly into another space. Not a vast cavern like the last one, but a smaller, almost perfectly circular chamber, perhaps 50 feet across. The walls were smooth, obsidian black, seeming to absorb the light. The floor sloped gently towards the center. And in the center, resting on a low, natural stone pedestal, was the source of the green light and the hum. The Codex Maleficarum. The folio. Atherton's cursed book. It lay open, pages glowing with that same sickly green luminescence I remembered from the forbidden wing of the archive. The massive, complex, knot-like symbol pulsed on the revealed page, casting writhing shadows across the obsidian walls. The hum emanated directly from it, a low, powerful thrum that vibrated the very air. Scattered around the pedestal were bones. Old, yellowed human bones, arranged in strange, ritualistic patterns. But my attention was immediately ripped away from the horrifying book. Because standing beside the pedestal, seemingly drawn to its light, their backs towards us, were two figures. Bryce and Emma Ray. They weren't moving. Just standing there, side by side, staring intently at the glowing pages of the Codex, their forms silhouetted against its eerie light. Bryce! Emma! I hissed, dragging Jackson the last few feet out of the fissure and propping him against the wall. They didn't turn. Didn't react. It was as if they were completely entranced, mesmerized by the book's presence. Come on. We have to go. I urged, moving towards them, my key held ready. Typhon's coming. Still no response. I reached Bryce, grabbing his shoulder. He felt cold. Stiff. His eyes, reflecting the green light, were wide, vacant, utterly devoid of recognition. He wasn't seeing me, he was seeing whatever the codex showed him. Emma Ray was the same, her face pale, lips slightly parted, eyes fixed on the glowing page with horrifying intensity. They were lost. Consumed by the codex's influence, just as Typhon had hinted. The resonance he spoke of, it hadn't just led them here, it had captured them. Just then, Typhon appeared at the fissure entrance, gliding silently into the chamber. His white form seemed less distinct here, flickering slightly, as if the codex's aura interfered with his own manifestation. The furious hatred in his black eyes, however, was clearer than ever. His damaged hand, though still dissolving slightly at the edges, was already reforming. Impressive, Minus, he hissed, his gaze sweeping across the scene, me, the entranced teenagers, the weakly breathing Jackson against the wall, and finally settling on the glowing codex. Atherton's poison spreads far indeed. So this is its heart? Or merely another echo chamber? He took a step towards the pedestal, his attention momentarily diverted by the book's power. It was my only chance. Ignoring Bryce and Emma Ray, beyond saving, perhaps, at least for now, I turned back to Jackson. He needed to get out. Even if I couldn't save the others, I had to try and save one. Hauling him up again, ignoring the searing pain in my own protesting muscles, I started dragging him back towards the fissure entrance. Leaving so soon? Typhon's voice whipped around, cold and sharp. He spun back towards me, abandoning his inspection of the codex. Did you think I'd let the tainted one escape again? He moved, faster than I could react, cutting off my path to the fissure, his reformed hand lashing out. I shoved Jackson sideways, barely dodging the blow myself. Typhon's claws raked across the obsidian wall, leaving deep gouges, sparks flying. Just let us go, Typhon. I panted, placing myself between him and Jackson. Take the book. Take Bryce and Emma. Isn't that what you want? Control? Power? Typhon laughed, that cold, empty sound echoing horribly in the confined space. Control? Power? Oh, Minus, you still think too small. This isn't about control. It's about integration. Understanding. The Codex offers knowledge, pathways Atherton barely glimpsed. But its resonance is chaotic. Unstable. It needs focus. Direction. His black eyes burned into mine. It needs a will. He gestured towards the entranced teenagers. These vessels are weak. Flawed. Easily consumed. But you, a Minus, you carry the Guardian Key's echo. You carry Atherton's mark. You resist. You endure. You could be the perfect conduit. The perfect focus. Go to hell, I spat, raising my key again, though I knew it likely wouldn't be enough this time. Hell. Typhon tilted his head. Perhaps. Or perhaps, ascension. He began to glide towards me again, his white form shimmering, seeming to draw power from the Codex's green glow. But as he approached, something changed. The Codex's hum faltered. The green light flickered violently. Bryce and Emma Ray shuddered, moaning softly, their vacant eyes blinking. The knot-like symbol on the open page seemed to waver, distort. Typhon stopped, sensing the shift, his attention snapping back to the book. What? And then, I felt it. A surge of cold energy, familiar, chilling. Coming not from the codex, but from outside the chamber. From the direction of the fissure leading back to the cavern. Span class equals noise resonance span detected, a voice whispered, cold and geometric, directly into my mind. Span class equals noise Atherton span codex signature. Unstable. Span class equals noise requires span. Neutralization. Unit 3C? Here? How? A shard of pure, solidified cold, impossibly thin and sharp, shot through the fissure entrance, faster than sight. It wasn't aimed at Typhon. It wasn't aimed at me. It struck the glowing Codex Maleficarum dead center. The shard of absolute cold struck the Codex Maleficarum dead center. There was no explosion, no shattering sound. Instead, the moment the impossibly thin crystalline structure phased into the glowing green page, the book screamed. Not a psychic echo, but a high-frequency, multi-layered sound that ripped through the chamber, vibrating the obsidian walls, shaking the very air. The green light pulsed erratically, flickering like a dying fluorescent tube. The low, resonant hum became discordant, stuttering, breaking apart into jarring static bursts. On the pedestal, the codex spasmed, pages fluttering wildly as if caught in a hurricane, the knot-like symbol on the impacted page fracturing, bleeding lines of flickering green energy that quickly faded to black. Bryce and Emma Ray cried out simultaneously, collapsing to the floor, clutching their heads, freed from their trance but disoriented and clearly in pain. Their vacant stares vanished, replaced by confusion and terror as they registered their surroundings, the dark chamber, the dying book, the weakly breathing Jackson near the fissure, and the incandescent fury gathering on Typhon's face. Typhon shrieked, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage, spinning away from me towards the fissure entrance, his black eyes blazing, searching the darkness beyond for the source of the attack. Interloper, he hissed, his white form flickering violently, shadows stretching unnaturally long behind him. Atherton's chill. How? He seemed genuinely surprised, thrown off balance, his focus ripped away from us, from the codex, towards this new, unexpected threat. This was it. Our only chance. Up! Now! I yelled, scrambling towards Bryce and Emma Ray, hauling them roughly to their feet. They were dazed, stumbling, but conscious. Jackson! We gotta move. I half lifted, half dragged Jackson towards the fissure, his body limp, groaning weakly. Bryce, seeing his friend, seemed to find a spark of adrenaline, moving to help me support Jackson's weight despite his own injuries. Emma Ray, pale and trembling, followed close behind, casting terrified glances back at Typhon. Typhon, still fixated on the fissure entrance, seemed to sense our movement. He whipped his head back around, his face contorted in a mask of inhuman fury. You will not escape. He surged towards us, moving faster than I thought possible, his reformed hand reaching, claws extended, dark energy crackling around them. No time to reach the fissure. We were exposed. Instinct took over. As Typhon lunged, I shoved the kids behind me and raised my guardian key, my key, the silver one, not as a weapon, but as a shield, focusing all my will, all my desperate hope, into it. Seal! I screamed, slamming the base of the key against the obsidian floor between us and Typhon, recalling Atherton's echo, the guardian key. Atherton's true seal. The key flared with silver light, brighter than before. The faint knot-like symbol etched on its handle burned white-hot. A wave of pure, neutral energy pulsed outwards, striking Typhon mid-lunge. He didn't dissolve. He didn't recoil in agony like before. He simply stopped. Frozen solid, inches away, his furious expression locked in place, his outstretched claws halted mid-air. Not encased in ice, but held fast by an invisible, shimmering field of force emanating from the key, binding him. I stared, stunned. It had worked. A temporary seal? A binding? The silver light from the key faded, leaving it just a piece of metal again, though it felt strangely warm in my hand now. Typhon remained frozen, a ghostly white statue of rage. How long would it hold? Impossible to know. Go. Go. I urged the kids, not waiting to find out. We scrambled into the narrow fissure, dragging Jackson, leaving the frozen Typhon and the dying, flickering codex behind us in the dark, silent chamber. The passage back felt longer, more treacherous this time, adrenaline warring with exhaustion. Jackson's weight was immense, his breathing shallow. Bryce sobbed quietly, guilt and fear overwhelming him. Emma Ray kept looking back, expecting Typhon to appear at any moment. But nothing followed. Only the silence of the deep places. We stumbled back out into the main cavern. The green fungal glow was gone, plunging it into near absolute darkness, lit only by the faint silver pulse of my key. The stone altar stood empty, the shattered mannequin gone, presumably consumed or dispersed by the energy backlash. The piles of dust and bone fragments that were the road figures remained, undisturbed. The air felt lighter, less charged, less hostile, as if disrupting the codex had lessened the ambient wrongness of this place. But we weren't safe yet. We still had to get back to Gaia, back through the tunnel. Supporting Jackson between us, Bryce and I began the slow, agonizing trek back across the cavern floor, towards the corridor entrance where my dying torch still cast a few pathetic embers. Emma Ray stayed close, holding my key aloft, its faint silver light our only guide. As we passed the spot where the road figures had dissolved, Bryce stumbled, kicking something that skittered across the floor. Emma Ray lowered the key light. Lying amongst the dust and bone fragments was one of the smooth, obsidian masks the figures had worn. Intact. Bryce stared at it, his face paling further. He reached down hesitantly, picking it up. It was featureless, cold, reflecting the key's faint light like a pool of black water. "Leave it," I said tiredly. "It's nothing. Just remnants." But Bryce held it, turning it over in his hands. "No," he whispered, his voice trembling. "It feels familiar." He pressed his fingers against the smooth, cold surface. Like Rex's worry stone, but cold. Before I could react, the mask seemed to flow. Not melt, but shift, like liquid shadow, conforming to Bryce's grip, flowing up his arm, under his sleeve. He cried out, dropping the keys. Both mine and Rex's fell with a clatter, trying to pull the flowing darkness off, but it was too fast. It enveloped his hand, his forearm, sinking into his skin, leaving behind faint, dark, vein-like lines tracing their way up his arm towards his shoulder, towards his neck. He collapsed, gasping, clutching his arm, eyes wide with terror. What's happening?" I stared in horror. Remnants? No. Traps. Echoes. Waiting. The indexing wasn't just the ritual, it was this place. It absorbed, it bound, it infected. And Bryce, carrying Rex's resonance. Rex's guilt had just picked up a direct line. Bryce gasped, clutching his arm where the obsidian mask had flowed into him, the dark, vein-like line stark against his pale skin. He shuddered violently, eyes rolling back for a second before snapping back into focus, filled with a new, terrifying clarity. "It's inside," he whispered, his voice sounding strangely doubled, layered with a dry, papery echo. "I can feel them. Hear them. The echoes. Bryce! Snap out of it!" Emma Ray cried, shaking his uninjured shoulder. "No time!" I snapped, grabbing both Rex's key and my own guardian key from the floor where Bryce had dropped them. The silver guardian key still felt warm, faintly pulsing. Rex's key remained cold, inert. "We move now. Help me with Jackson." Whatever was happening to Bryce, dealing with it had to wait. Typhon was frozen, but for how long? The cavern felt unstable, the silence pregnant with unspoken threats. Together, Bryce, moving stiffly, his infected arm held rigidly at his side, his face unnervingly calm now, and I managed to get Jackson back on his feet, supporting his weight between us. Emma Ray retrieved my dying torch, holding it aloft, its flickering embers casting desperate shadows. We stumbled back towards the fissure leading out of the codex chamber. As we passed the now dark, silent codex on its pedestal, Bryce hesitated, his gaze drawn to it. The papery echo in his voice returned, stronger now. "Indexing, incomplete, binding fractured, opportunity. Bryce! Move!" I yelled, yanking him forward. He flinched, breaking eye contact with the book, but the calm, analytical look in his eyes didn't fade. He was still himself, mostly, but something else was looking out from behind his eyes, assessing, calculating. The mask's echo? The indexing entity itself? We plunged back into the narrow fissure, the darkness absolute beyond the torch's sweet glow and the faint silver light of my key. The journey back felt infinitely longer. Jackson groaned with every jolt, his consciousness fading in and out. Bryce moved with a strange, detached efficiency, his injured arm seemingly forgotten, his steps unnaturally steady despite the uneven ground. Emma Ray stayed close behind me, constantly glancing back into the blackness, flinching at every drip of water, every scrape of our feet. Emerging back into the vast main cavern felt like surfacing into slightly less suffocating darkness. The altar was a dark shape in the distance. No sign of Typhon. Had the binding held? Or had he simply withdrawn? "Faster," I urged, my voice a harsh whisper. Towards the corridor. We half-dragged, half-carried Jackson across the cavern floor, past the piles of dust and bone. As we neared the corridor entrance where I'd first confronted the robed figures, Bryce stopped abruptly. "Wait," he hissed, his head tilted, the papery echo more pronounced. Resonance shifting. His breaking free. My blood ran cold. I couldn't feel anything, couldn't sense Typhon like Bryce apparently now could. The mask, it had given him some kind of connection to this place's twisted energies. "How long?" I demanded. Bryce closed his eyes for a second, the dark veins on his arm seeming to pulse faintly. "Minutes. Maybe less. The Guardian Key seal is strong, but temporary. Designed to hold, not destroy. Damn it. We'd never make it back to Gaia, not carrying Jackson." "Emma Ray," I said, turning to the terrified girl. "Take my key." I pressed the faintly glowing silver Guardian Key into her hand. "Run. Get back to the Gaia store. Use the key on the tunnel entrance, just hold it against the frame. It should stabilize the passage, keep it open longer, maybe ward off anything else. Get the others. Get Darren. Get yourselves out. Go straight up to the mall. Don't stop for anything. Pry open the main doors if you have to. Get help. She stared at me, eyes wide, clutching the key. But what about you? And Bryce? And Jackson? We'll be right behind you, I lied. We need to create a diversion. Slow Typhon down. Now G.O. She hesitated, looking at Bryce, then at the unconscious Jackson, then back at me, tears streaming down her face. But the primal instinct for survival won out. With a final, choked sob, she turned and sprinted into the darkness of the corridor leading back towards the mall proper. Leaving me, the barely conscious Jackson, and the increasingly alien Bryce alone in the echoing cavern, with Typhon moments away from breaking free. Okay, Bryce, I said, turning to him, trying to keep my voice calm. New plan. Can you help me get him hidden? Somewhere Typhon won't look immediately. Bryce looked down at Jackson, then back towards the distant, frozen figure of Typhon near the fissure, then at his own arm, the dark lines pulsing faintly. The papery echo whispered, survival requires sacrifice, obstruction, delay. He nodded, his expression grim, eerily calm. This way. The indexing showed alcoves. Hidden passages used by the keepers. He gestured towards a section of the cavern wall I hadn't noticed before, shrouded in deep shadow. Together, we dragged Jackson towards the spot Bryce indicated. Sure enough, behind a curtain of naturally formed rock pillars, was a low opening, barely visible. We carefully maneuvered Jackson inside, propping him up in a semi-seated position in the cramped, dark space. He was still breathing, but unresponsive. Stay with him, I told Bryce. Keep quiet. Don't use the key unless Typhon finds you. Maybe its energy will shield you somehow. I handed Rex's cold key back to him. Bryce looked at the key, then at me, the conflict between his own fear and the mask's cold logic visible in his eyes. Probability of direct confrontation, low, the echo whispered through him. Optimal strategy, concealment. He nodded again and squeezed into the alcove beside Jackson, pulling loose rocks and debris partially over the opening. Leaving them hidden, I took a deep breath and turned back towards the center of the cavern, my gaze fixed on the fissure where Typhon remained frozen. The binding wouldn't last much longer. I needed a diversion. Something to draw Typhon's full attention, give Emma Ray time to reach Gaia, give Bryce and Jackson a chance. My eyes fell on the broken altar, the cracked stone slab where the mannequin had lain. The conduit suffers. The tall figure's words. This altar was important to them, to their ritual, to the indexing. Maybe. Making my way towards it, I felt the air grow colder again, the silence charged with anticipation. Typhon's frozen form remained still, but I could feel the pressure building, the binding straining. Reaching the altar, I surveyed the damage. The mannequin was shattered, fragments scattered. The stone slab deeply cracked. But the connection. I could still feel a faint, residual resonance, a link to the echoes, the trapped consciousnesses. My gaze fell on the dark fissure where the robed figures had dragged their fallen comrade. Sacrifice. Obstruction. Delay. An idea, terrible and desperate, formed. If Typhon wanted integration, wanted conduits, wanted echoes, maybe I could give him one he couldn't ignore. Taking Rex's notebook from my pocket, I found a relatively clean page. My pen felt clumsy in my trembling hand. I wrote quickly, hoping the words made sense, hoping someone, someday, might understand. They're echoes. Trapped. Indexing binds them. Key disrupts. Mark balances. Typhon wants integration. Used Bryce mask. Jackson hurt. Emma Ray escaped with Guardian key to Gaia tunnel. Bryce had Jackson hidden near Fisher. Going to draw Typhon. Tell Abby, sorry. I folded the note, tucked it deep within Jackson's pocket when I'd hidden him. Now, for the diversion. I looked towards the fissure where the bodies were disposed of. Then back at the altar. Then towards the frozen Typhon. My hand went to my own chest. A conduit. A focus. A sacrifice. With grim determination, I stepped onto the cracked stone altar, facing the fissure where Typhon stood bound, waiting for the inevitable snap of the seal. Standing on the cracked stone altar felt strangely right. The faint, residual resonance hummed beneath my feet, a connection to the fragmented echoes, the pain, the chaos this place represented. Across the darkened cavern, Typhon remained frozen, bound by the Guardian Key's temporary seal, but I could feel the energy building, the invisible field straining, close to shattering. Behind me, hidden in the alcove, Bryce and the grievously wounded Jackson waited in silence. Somewhere above, Emma Ray raced towards the tunnel, carrying the hope of escape, the silver key her only guide. My purpose crystallized. Not to defeat Typhon, that felt impossible. But to buy time. To be the diversion. To draw his full, unrestrained fury onto myself, away from the kids, away from the escape route. Recompense, the tall figure had hissed. Maybe this was mine. My hand still held Rex's cold, dark key. Useless as a weapon, perhaps, but Bryce had called it a catalyst. A focus. I raised it, not towards Typhon, but towards the fissure where the robed figures had disposed of their fallen comrade, where countless echoes likely lingered, unbound. You want integration, Typhon? I yelled, my voice echoing unnaturally in the vast, silent cavern. You want echoes? You want a conduit? Fine. Have them. I focus my will, pouring every ounce of fear, anger, guilt, and desperate resolve into Rex's key, aiming it like a lens towards the fissure, towards the lingering resonance of the dispersed robed figures, towards the suffering trapped in this place. Indexing failed. Echoes released. Find your host. The effect wasn't immediate, not like the key seal or Unit 3CS purge. It was slower, more insidious. A low groan emanated from the fissure, not geological, but a sound of countless voices stirring. The air grew heavy, thick with psychic static. Faint, swirling shadows began to coalesce near the opening, drawn by my call, by the key's resonance, by the presence of the ultimate predator trapped nearby. Typhon felt it. The binding field around him flickered violently. His black eyes snapped towards the fissure, then back to me, incandescent with rage and something else. Hunger? Fool. You don't know what you unleash, he roared, the sound tearing through the cavern, his white form straining against the shimmering seal. With a final, deafening crack, the Guardian Key's binding shattered. Typhon exploded outwards, not attacking me immediately, but turning towards the growing mass of swirling shadow echoes pouring from the fissure, his form lengthening, distorting, becoming less humanoid, more serpentine, vast and terrible. Mine, he shrieked, lunging towards the nascent echo storm. This was my chance. Ignoring the titanic struggle erupting behind me, Typhon wrestling with the roar, chaotic energy of unbound echoes, I leaped from the altar and sprinted towards the fissure where Bryce and Jackson were hidden. "Come on! Now!" I hissed, pulling aside the debris. Bryce scrambled out, eyes wide with terror, hauling the barely conscious Jackson with him. "What did you do?" Bryce stammered, staring back at the swirling vortex of white energy and black shadow battling near the altar. "Bought us time," I grunted, pushing them towards the corridor leading back to Gaia. "Don't look back. Just run." And we ran. Through the dark corridor, past the empty bookstore, the cowering Titan, the silent escalators. Through the warp mall, past the serpent fountain, ignoring the mannequin Typhon had left with his message. We ran until the blue-green peeling walls of the Gaia store came into view. Emma Ray was there, standing by the tunnel entrance, the silver guardian key held tight, its light pulsing faintly. The other 4 kids huddled behind her, peering out fearfully. "He's okay." Emma Ray sobbed with relief as she saw Jackson, alive, albeit barely. "Tunnel! Now!" I commanded, not slowing down. We practically threw Jackson into the tunnel first, then Bryce, then Emma Ray, the other 4 scrambling in after them. As I prepared to enter last, I risked one final glance back into the violet gloom of the mall below. The distant sounds of Typhon's battle still echoed faintly, shrieks, roars, sounds like reality itself tearing. But closer, standing motionless by the serpent fountain, was a figure. Tall, thin, draped in shadow. Watching me. Typhon? No. This felt different. Colder. More calculating. Had something else been drawn by the chaos? Or freed? No time to ponder. I scrambled into the tunnel, pulling myself upwards into the darkness, the faint silver light of the guardian key held by Emma Ray somewhere above the only beacon. The climb felt endless. Exhaustion gnawed at me. My borrowed strength, the adrenaline, all fading, leaving only aching muscles and raw fear. Finally, gasping, we hauled ourselves out, one by one, back into the dusty, mannequin-filled silence of the Tartarus store. Darren, the expelled man, was gone. Hopefully found his way out, found his way home. The kids collapsed onto the floor, a mixture of relief, grief, and shock washing over them. Jackson was unconscious but breathing steadily. Bryce sat beside him, head bowed, Rex's key lying forgotten beside him, the dark veins on his arm still visible but fainter now, perhaps dormant. I sealed the hole. Not permanently, that wasn't my job, wasn't possible perhaps. But I dragged heavy crates, overturned the counter, barricaded it as best I could. A futile gesture, maybe, but necessary. Then, I unlocked the front door. "Go," I said to the kids, my voice raspy, utterly drained. "Get Jackson to a hospital. Tell them you found him injured after getting lost exploring the closed mall. Stick to that story. Don't mention Tartarus, don't mention Gaia, don't mention Typhon. Ever. Understand?" They nodded numbly, helping each other up, supporting Jackson. Emma Ray hesitated, holding out the silver guardian key. "Sir, this?" I shook my head, gently closing her fingers around it. "Keep it. Seems you know how to use it better than I do. Maybe it'll help keep you safe. Or help you find what you lost." Her eyes filled with tears again, but she nodded, clutching it tight. Bryce looked up at me, his face etched with a pain far older than his years. "Rex." "Go home, kid," I said softly. "Look after your brother. Keep him away from here." Maybe now he can finally rest. He held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly, picking up Rex's dark key, before turning and helping carry Jackson out into the pre-dawn light filtering through the mall skylights. I watched them go, 7 young lives irrevocably changed, 2 lost forever in the echoes below. When they were gone, I locked the Tartarus door again, pulled down the heavy metal sheet with a final, rattling groan. My shift was almost over. The 4 a.m. guard would be arriving soon. I walked back to my massage chair, collapsing into it, the exhaustion absolute. I looked around the silent, empty mall, bathed in the soft, returning light of dawn. Had I done the right thing? Broken rules, unleashed chaos, maybe even doomed Bryce? Or had I saved them? Saved some of them? Restored some semblance of balance, however temporary? I didn't know. My eyes fell on the mannequins lining the walls of Tartarus, visible through the gaps in the boarded-up windows. Jackson, Array, M. Their names now etched onto the blank faces, joining the dozens of others. Waiting. Echoing. The job remained. Watch Tartarus. Don't let anyone in. Don't let anyone out. Especially now. Because I knew, with a certainty colder than Typhon's gaze, that whatever I had done down there, whatever balance I had attempted, it wasn't over. The echoes lingered. The keys existed. And Typhon. Typhon remembered names now. Rex. Bryce. Abby. Mine. The long watch continued.